Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Inside HR, the webinar series from HR Review with me, James Marsh. Times are changing for early careers talent teams. An unprecedented 2 years, well, that's an understatement, isn't it? An unprecedented 2 years has drastically changed how we recruit, assess, select, onboard, and develop the next generation of talent. With such changes come challenges, but also innovation and new priorities, which is what we're going to be exploring today together with our friends at Aeon. Over the next hour, we're going to discuss the challenges, trends, and priorities for early careers talent teams in 2022. We're going to talk about the innovative ways to help you design a successful modern-day early talent careers program, and why now is the time for a more holistic view of early-stage talent programs and how you can recruit for a more future-focused view of your organization. So let me quickly introduce our panel this morning. We're joined first by Sarah Keenahan. She's the head of client solutions at Aeon. She's an organizational psychologist and talent strategy expert. She has been on Inside HR before, so it's great to welcome her back. Sarah, how are you doing this morning?
Great, thank you.
Great to have you with us. Nice to be able to see you as well. We had some technical difficulties in the run up to this, but we can now see Sarah. And we can see Yasmina Gabasek as well. Yasmina is the resourcing business partner at Veolia, who are our case study today. She's an expert on early careers resourcing as well. Yasmina, good morning. Welcome to Inside HR.
Morning, everyone. Really looking forward to today.
Yeah, no, it's a really hot button topic, as we said, and something that we're really looking forward to getting our teeth stuck into over the next hour. This is a complex topic, and we're going to start with a complex slide. And we're going to start on the left. You've got a student recruitment survey from 3 months ago, which shows that they expect student recruitment to grow again this year. On the right, we've got a survey of student predictions. 29% of employers think it will become even more difficult to recruit for IT roles. 23% think employers will rebalance their recruitment away from graduates towards school and college leavers. 48% think student recruitment will become increasingly automated. Yasmin, I want to start with you. As a recruiter of students, a student recruiter, what are your thoughts on these trends that we can see in front of us right now? I know we talked about automation there. I know that Veolia has involved automation in their recruitment process. What are your thoughts on this? And also maybe what were the drivers for you to introduce automation into that process?
Yeah, so I think that the biggest driver in order for us to go and do that is the fact that quite a lot of the emerging talent and early careers candidates, they don't really come with any significant experience or skill sets. So it's very hard for us to establish which candidates would be the correct fit for the business and for our teams and for the roles that they're applying for. So kind of on the back of that, we started looking at it from a different perspective. So we started to look at cognitive abilities instead, at the soft skills they could bring into the business, and at the whole personality fit into the business as well. And in respect of the trend, I can definitely confirm, especially from Veolia's point of view and experience that we've experienced over the last couple of years. So we've seen a significant rise in the volume of the early careers positions that we recruit for. So we pretty much doubled the amount of graduate positions that we had from last year to this year. And it's a similar story with the apprenticeships as well.
And when you say skill shortages in applicants at student level, is that a skill? Are you seeing a skills shortage across the whole industry as well?
So I think that the biggest skill shortages at the minute are definitely within the engineering sector and within the technical sector. So that is where the main shortages come from. But we have also seen a major drop in the volume of applications, especially within apprenticeships, probably a bit less so among the graduates, but that's probably got to do with our employer brand as well. So we are better known, I suppose, among the universities than we are among the schools. And this is something that we're currently working on to drive the employer brand and to drive the visibility of our brand.
And we're going to talk a little bit later about apprenticeships as well. We had National Apprenticeship Week last month, and I know that's going to be something we're going to touch on later as well. So, Sarah, Yasmin has just spoken through some of the challenges there, the skills shortages, the things that they're seeing at Veolia. We've got on the screen here what we're basically going to cover off today in terms of those challenges? Just talk us through those 6 challenges that we've got on the screen there, and sort of Aeon's perspective and our perspective today on how we're going to sort of address those.
Yeah, so it's going to come to no surprise to anyone that there's challenges at each stage of the early careers talent life cycle, from attracting individuals to your organization to ensuring you're bringing the right people in with future-proof skills, and then how you retain that talent in the business to gain the return on investment from all that training that you've delivered for them. And there's lots of it sounds kind of like an internal challenge, but of course it's impacted by a myriad of external challenges too. Mm-hmm. And they're all impacting the way that organizations are looking at recruiting, retaining, and rewarding talent. And there are also those changing expectations from candidates and employees. So particularly at entry level, in terms of what graduates and early careers kind of candidates are expecting from their organization, they're expecting a well thought out ESG strategy and an organization that's going to have a net positive impact. We also have ongoing digital disruption that's driving this huge change in the types of skills and capabilities we need to hire for. And then there's the Great Resignation, which organizations, they're struggling to retain employees. And we run a regular pulse survey, and 82% of respondents to our global pulse survey reported that increasing turnover is a top concern. So we really need to kind of redefine our employee value proposition and communicate it across all stages of the employee life cycle, which is why it's so important to bring these strands together. To create that cohesive strategy and narrative that communicates this message at each stage of the employee life cycle. So what we're going to do today is talk about these different challenges across each of the 6 different stages and what Veolia and what other organizations are doing to kind of tackle this.
I mean, 82% saying that they're experiencing that challenge of turnover. I'd love to talk to the other 18. I haven't met anyone.
I don't know who they are. Yeah, where are they?
Who are they? Whatever they're doing, let's do it. Now, it's huge. And you talked about external factors there. And I think I seem to have used this sort of classic understatement in every webinar we've done in the last 9 months or so, the unprecedented circumstances of the last couple of years. That those external factors have really driven that need to take this holistic view, haven't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember even before 2 years ago, I was saying we're living in a time of unprecedented change, and then COVID happened. And that was unprecedented change. It's completely redefined what I meant by unprecedented. So it's definitely, it's changed a lot about how we go about work. And I think there's massive opportunity there to change how we think about where, when, and how people do work, and use kind of increased flexibility as a kind of attraction technique as well. So there's lots of things that, this really challenging time has brought about in terms of changing employment practices for the better. And also, I see it as well, an increased focus on employee well-being, which I think is a really positive thing as well.
Which has been a big factor over that change, that transition as well. Absolutely. So thanks, Sarah. I think we can all agree that those are the big key challenges. Yasmina, let's get into Veolia and let's talk a little bit about how you attract new and diverse talent at Veolia. Just give us an overview of your approach to that.
Yeah, thank you, James. So I think, as mentioned already, so as the world around us changes kind of rapidly, taking into consideration the continuous growth of our business and the whole environmental sector as well, and there being an increased importance now on the environmental sector. And obviously, as mentioned, the challenging labour market conditions that we're currently facing, where the lack of skilled talent is now kind of more prominent than it ever has been before, especially within the technical sector, within the engineering sector. I think we truly believe, in Veolia, we truly believe that we have to reshape our early careers offering in order to provide more sustainable opportunities for passionate and ambitious young people from a range of different social demographics. So I think over the next few years at Veolia, we are really focusing on increasing our early careers intake. So we truly understand the benefits that this will have on our workforce, succession planning, talent pipelines for business critical roles and hard to fill roles, and not to mention the impact on the whole employee retention and engagement piece. So in order for us to achieve that, we kind of looked at how we attract these groups of people into our business. And I think the first couple of things that we really focused on was, what do we put out there on a social media, who are the right partners for us in respect of diversity and inclusion, and also where do we actually go to attract this type of people into the business, because we can't take the same approach as what we do for the skilled worker. So for the likes of the early careers talent, the Indeed, CV Library and Total Jobs are not the best platforms to go to. So it's really building the relationships with universities, building the relationships with colleges, and building the closer relationships with the talent itself. So what we kind of looked at is really trying to provide a rich and engaging content to inspire young people to consider a career at Veolia and to consider a career in our sector. So really showcase the opportunities that we have to offer and support people to achieve their full potential in those opportunities. Another couple of things that we really focusing on is to kind of hold more insight days to inspire people into STEM. So we know that there's been a continuous kind of disengagement and a continuous drop over the past few years in people going into STEM.
I was going to say that predates the pandemic. That's been sort of on a downward trend for a little while, hasn't it?
It has, yes. So I think it's really important for us to work closely with people and really inspire the next generation to understand that they can actually have a fulfilling and rewarding career in STEM as well. So there's a lot of focus that we are kind of giving to that specific section. And then also, the last but not least, we kind of looked at removing the whole CV process. So obviously working with Aeons Assessment Solutions, we kind of introduced the use of gamified assessments that really allow us to kind of identify the candidate's potential. So we are now able to kind of gain sight of candidates' key skills and traits, which, unlike, I suppose, our old process of sifting through the high volume of CVs, really shows us the candidate's true potential and ability, as in, what they could be if they do decide to go into this position and if they do receive the correct training and development from our side. So it's kind of really the importance of that.
So we hear a lot about the sort of the CV being dead now, and organizations, large and small, needing to move away from a traditional sort of CV application process. Talk us through what Aeon are doing in this, in terms of that sort of multifaceted attraction strategy and that assessment process and tools that you use.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the words that I love hearing when we talk about early careers candidates is that word potential, because that's what we're looking for. You don't see potential from a CV. You see someone who's potentially had more access to opportunities than others. So anyone looking to increase the diversity of their talent pool, the first thing I will say is don't use CVs as a method of selection or screening. Focus on potential. Another way that we're looking at, we kind of help our clients to increase or improve their attraction strategy is by scaling it using technology to reduce the effort required, but to really maximize impact and reach. So we have a series of matching tools that vary in complexity, but basically what they do is provide candidates with a more immersive and informative version of a realistic job preview. You see some examples on the screen. The tools ask candidates, what their values are, what their interests are, what they're motivated by, and then they're able to provide them with job matches that they'll find inherently motivating and fulfilling. And for a lot of people, they're roles that they may not have considered. One thing we're seeing across early careers is people dropping requirements of having a specific type of degree. So there's lots of people out there who might not know they could apply to your tech program. But by going through this kind of job matching tool that's really easy to share on social media, they can learn that. So it really broadens the talent that you can bring into the business and the people that you reach. Additionally, what's interesting about these tools is that there's different applications and ways that you can position it. So, for example, we worked with Vodafone to create their Future Jobs Finder. And this was first developed as part of their corporate social responsibility strategy. And what they wanted to do was to reduce youth unemployment. That's now evolved, and the focus is on getting more women into tech roles. And as the outreach is driven by tech, it's really reflective of that, and it's really effective at getting more people into technology roles, especially women and kind of diverse individuals. As I mentioned at the outset, this tool is really effective at scaling your outreach. And Vodafone, as an example, have had 4.6 million users access the tool, and have recommended 2.5 million digital careers. So Vodafone's one, because it's linked to the CSR strategy, isn't just focused on Vodafone internal roles, it's broader. So it's linked to the Indeed jobs board. So it really gives people insights into what roles they could potentially be doing. Circo, on the other hand, they focused the tool internally, and they had a retention problem. So they were hiring individuals, investing loads of time in training them, for them to leave a couple of months later. And this was for a prison officer role. So as you can imagine, you need really realistic insights into what that role is going to look like to know.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Do it. Yeah, like, I mean, I won't be able to do it. So therefore, they created an upfront job matcher tool to provide insights into the role. So that kind of realistic job preview, and kind of discourage people who aren't a good fit to apply for the role. But then also people who were a good fit, match them to specific types of prison officer roles, because there's different roles that you can go into. So there's different applications of these upfront job matching tools, depending on what your organization is trying to do.
And just quickly, Yasmina talked a little bit there about increasing the diversity of the talent pool that they attract. How do these tools specifically help do that?
Yeah, so a lot of our organization, when they're talking about attraction, they talk about like going to an on-site event. This allows you to share widely on social media. So you gain access to a lot more people. It's available. They normally take only about 5 minutes to complete, and you can do it on your mobile phone. So it's so quick. It just builds a lot more kind of awareness of your organization, and also of the types of programs that you do. So there's lots of organizations who are now hiring for technology or IT roles that may not have done that previously. And because candidates in the early career space who aren't that savvy about what organizations actually look like might not make that link. So by giving them access to this type of tool, sharing it, giving them matches to those types of roles, it really increases the awareness of your brand and what's available within your organization.
And it also removes the advantage that those who may have had a more privileged education or access to people who can give them insight on that through it, and then can use their CV or whatever it is to do that. It sort of limits that advantage for people, so it makes it more accessible for everybody, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk about that second challenge. How do you ensure that recruitment process is inclusive and fair? Yasmina, I want to come to you again and talk about Veolia. You implemented online assessments, and a lot of that focuses on, it's almost a personality assessment, isn't it? How do you ensure fairness runs through all of that, and you ensure that and make sure that none of those sort of biases that we hear a lot about with traditional recruitment processes creep in?
Yeah, so I think the introduction of the new ways of working, the artificial intelligence, and the whole gamification technology has been a real game changer for us. As our business obviously continues to grow and lead kind of the way in ecological transformation, there was really a need for the early careers team to implement the assessments that allow us to streamline the recruitment process and focus on the candidates' cognitive skills, while also retaining a high validity and fairness standards. So the new process uses artificial intelligence to eliminate unconscious bias, and that's from both the recruiters and the hiring managers, meaning that our recruitment process is transparent and fair for everyone involved. Not only has kind of this broadened the range of the candidates that we now see, but it also improved the quality of the candidates applying for the role, because whereas previously we might have missed some of the candidates, or we might have not seen that quality in the candidates, this now allows us to actually see that as well. So I think overall, we are now attracting a more diverse talent in a more kind of user-focused and efficient way, which obviously helps the resourcing team as well, because it makes it easier for us. candidates are kind of more aligned to our roles and culture, which obviously supports our hiring manager decisions and future retention and attrition as well. So I think one of the main things that we are trying to achieve is that, the candidates that we do recruit into the business, that they stay with us for a long period of time.
We've got some questions creeping in already, and I promised that we set aside 10 minutes at the end of the webinar, but there's a couple that are relevant here. One of the other questions that's come in about when you digitize a recruitment process like this is that don't you automatically exclude some people who may be not as digitally savvy or are digitally excluded? Is that a possibility, Sarah?
What I will say on that is, particularly with early careers, but no, it's my first response. I think the digital accessibility is really important because, and what came out of the pandemic is that not everyone has access to a laptop or a tablet device, right?
I think that's what's behind the question, yeah.
Yeah, but what's really important in that case is that every single part of your process is available to be completed on a mobile-enabled device, because you would have seen it from the news. Not everyone have access to a laptop. There'd be 4 people around one mobile phone. But if they can have access to a mobile phone and you make your process available, every single step, right down from your application form, all of your assessments, a video interview, an assessment center, all of it should be able to be completed on a mobile phone, because you're dead right. If you don't have a mobile-enabled process, you're excluding people from certain socio-economic status. It's restricting social mobility. So yeah, it's I would say no if your process is fully mobile enabled.
And in terms of Yasmina spoke through the process at Veolia. What other trends do you see in the industry at the moment in terms of implementing this kind of process?
Yeah, so across the industry, we're seeing people wanting to make better and fairer decisions more efficiently. There's lots of lean recruitment teams out there, but they want to make the best decisions possible. And by better decisions, I mean those that are obviously fair, but also those that are based on that special word again, potential, as opposed to previous experience. And Yasmina's talked brilliantly to how we kind of do it with online assessments, and how we use artificial intelligence. And what I want to talk about is kind of like how we do it with video interviewing, and how you can use AI to also deliver that fairness and objectivity. So we know there's some nervousness around implementing AI in recruitment, and that's because there have been some negative news stories out there. What's important about implementing AI is that you use one that has been designed ethically. And what we mean by ethically is that you use a supervised learning approach. So you don't give the AI free rein to start deciding how it makes decisions. You set really clear parameters around how, and most importantly, why particular scores are given to a candidate. And that needs to be decided by experts in the field, and a really strict level of control needs to be maintained over it. And secondly, how you make these decisions is really important. So an ethical AI rating should rely only on speech content. So looking at positive and negative indicators of behavior found in what the candidate has said in their response. So only look at speech content. It's also important that these indicators are linked back to a legally defensible and validated competency model, and one that has been proven to be predictive of performance in the workplace. So for example, our AI links the scoring back to our ADEPT 15 model of workplace behavior. So a lot of problems that you've potentially heard about concerning AI start with when people look at other metrics. So facial expressions, micro expressions, and tonal analysis, as none of these have been found in any scientific literature to be predictive of success. So don't look at them to make decisions. And also it may be biased against neurodiverse candidates who kind of communicate in a different way. I'd also recommend, if you're implementing AI, particularly at a video interview stage, that you implement it to improve a screening process. What we see with AI generally is that it's better at screening out as opposed to selecting in. So good at kind of identifying poorer candidates, but it's not going to be as effective as a human at distinguishing between top performers at the top end of the scale, which is why we recommend taking an augmented approach. So having humans and the machine working together. And with Schroders, we implemented an award-winning process where they did just this. They used the AI to fairly screen out poorer candidates and then review top candidates before progressing them to the assessment center stage. And this saves recruiters loads of time with looking at candidates or reviewing videos where they aren't a good fit. And we've also found that it reduces adverse impact, so it's fairer. and fair across multiple demographics. So we've done analysis that looks at gender, ethnicity, age, socioeconomic status, and also sexual orientation. So it really is removing bias, but it also gets the best out of both kind of humans and machine, because you can't replace the human in the process, but you can augment the human performance and make it better and fairer for candidates.
And I think we talked about that last time, didn't we? In the sense that the much of the media coverage that has linked bias to AI, the bias is often in the human conception of the process, not the AI working within it.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's look at those poll results. Remember, we gave you a statement, which was, my organization has an inclusive and fair hiring process. And again, we're seeing some positive results here. 21% are in the top box, strongly agree. 49% saying agree. 7% saying don't know. 19% saying disagree, with just 2% strongly disagreeing, which again, I think, Sarah, it sounds really encouraging. It sounds like that is now the basis on which most people are approaching their early careers talent acquisition, is with inclusivity, fairness, and trying to eliminate bias within that process, which is really encouraging, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's the continuous interrogation of the fairness and inclusivity of the process that's really, really important. So you can say, right, we've implemented a process, we think it's fair, but it's looking at the data that sits behind that. So how do you know it's fair? It's now almost about taking it to the next level. What can we do to increase that inclusivity? How can we build it into our processes even more? So I think it's great that we're all like, yes, it's fair and inclusive, but now I think we need to start asking ourselves, how can we get the process even more fair and more inclusive? Because there's always things we can do better.
It's that continuous sort of improvement process, and never thinking that you've nailed it and that you can leave it and that it will just continue to work unchallenged. Let's move on to challenge 3 then. How do you manage a complex assessment center and make it engaging at the same time? Yasmina, again, I want to start with you and your experience at Veolia. I know that you regularly run assessment centers. How does that work, and what was your approach to that, and how do you make sure that, whilst it's a complicated process, but how do you make it fun?
Yeah, so thank you, James. We've actually had a proper look into how we run these centres. Obviously, pandemic kind of forced us to rethink how we do things. And whereas previously they used to take place face-to-face, they have now moved into the virtual space instead. And obviously, with that came the question, how do we keep it engaging? How do we engage with the candidates? How do we keep them motivated? How do we keep their interest throughout the day? So we kind of really change the whole process and how we do things. So, run up to the assessment days, what my team in particular does is they really speak to the candidates. They instruct them what's going to happen on a day. They let them know about all of the little details. They answer any questions that they might have, especially if they've got any concerns or reservations, run up to it. So we answer all of those ahead of the assessment day actually taking place. And then once they actually join the call, we work closely with the managers, and the managers have to prepare properly for that day as well. Effectively, what we really want to do is we want the candidates to really enjoy the day. We want them to have fun. We want it to be interactive. We don't want them to see the day as a formal interview process. And what we also advise the managers is that they completely focus on the competencies and on the interaction with the candidates, and they don't look for any kind of technical skills in the background, whereas what they normally do that for other positions. Sure. So when the candidates join the calls, we do a bit of an icebreaker. So the managers would introduce themselves, my team would introduce themselves, and then we would hand over to the candidates as well, so they get to interact with everyone. And we would ask them questions like, what were some of the interesting things they've done? What are they proud of? Have they done anything interesting that they want to share with us? And then from there, we kind of move into the group exercise. So the group exercise will be like a real life scenario, and the candidates get to interact with each other. They get to have a discussion with each other. And the whole point of the exercise for us is to see how the candidates again, interact with each other, how they treat each other, on whether or not they respect other candidates on a call. So it's really kind of just seeing that interaction piece. From the group exercise, they will then move on to their individual interviews. Again, those interviews are competency-based interviews, and they are what the managers will include in there is really values, kind of values-based questions, and this is where we kind of ensure that, you know, the candidates are the right fit for the business based on the values, and that they're going to have kind of, they're going to be able to achieve or see the purpose that we have as organization. And then obviously once all of that is kind of finished and completed, what my team ensures is that all of the candidates are provided with constructive feedback. And when we talk about the feedback, we don't talk about negatives and positives. We talk about the positives and recommendations. So we kind of moved away from telling the candidates, well, this didn't go too well. So what we try to do instead is we try to recommend to them, you know, what would be the points that we would advise them to maybe look at or prepare for.
Here's how it could have gone better.
Yes.
Yeah. I say I'm really interested in the concept of virtual assessment centres. The business I work for tried to run an assessment centre in central London right after we got through a lockdown, and we were all ready to go. And then unfortunately there was a huge political march protest right past the site, and we had to cancel it. So if it wasn't COVID, it was something else that caused us to continually postpone these real life assessment centres. Yasmin has given a real insight into what that looks like at Veolia, Sarah, which sounds quite exciting. How does a virtual world, a virtual assessment centre look like? What are the trends can you see in a virtual assessment centre that you might not even see doing it the traditional way?
Yeah, and James, I think the point that you brought up about that movement back to face-to-face is really interesting, because in terms of like trends of assessment centres, that's what I'm talking to my clients about at the minute. And because we now have to make that decision about whether we want to stay virtual, if we want to move.
And we were so excited about being able to go back live again, and it proved really problematic.
Yeah, and so my general recommendation to individuals is generally it's to keep it virtual, and there's a couple of reasons behind this. Firstly, in terms of diversity, it makes your assessment process much more accessible. So the person who asked the question earlier on about, you know, social mobility, are you excluding people from your process if you take it digital? Well, if you are making people pay to take public transport to get to your assessment centre, that's another cohort of people that you're removing from the process. So again, if your virtual assessment centre can happen on a phone and they can do it from their own home, that's really beneficial.
And the talent pool is geographically wider as well.
Exactly, yeah. Also think about people who have caring responsibilities. It's much easier to manage if they don't have to go overnight or be gone for hours. Also for neurodiverse candidates, it's much more comfortable to complete an assessment centre in an environment that you're familiar with, as opposed to like a conference room in a building you've never been in before.
So it removes a lot of that social anxiety that people can experience.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like it removes a lot of barriers. But I know for some organizations, you get pushback from the business. They want to have people face to face. And my recommendation then is to take a hybrid approach. So use the same technology, whether you're delivering in a face-to-face environment or a virtual environment, so that all the assessors' ratings are consistent, all of the data is captured in one place, but you have the flexibility to adapt depending on, you know, business needs, candidate needs. So that's kind of what I would say is most important as we come out of this process. If you're going to do something that's face-to-face, also make sure you can have it in a virtual environment in case there's a massive protest on the day of your assessment centre.
It was just very poor luck, unfortunately.
And I think
talk us through a little bit. Sorry, Sarah. Sorry to cut you off. Just talk us through a little bit about that. What Yasmina mentioned there as well about the importance of feedback and that those recommendations that Veolia give their applicants. How again with this virtual process? How does that look?
So I think what's important with feedback is that everyone gets feedback at each stage of the assessment process. It gives people return on investment immediately for the time they've spent with your organization and applying. I think, again, augment the human experience by having some form of automation in your candidate reports. And we can do that through our platform called Panorama. which is a virtual assessment centre platform. You can pull through feedback based on the ratings candidates have gotten, and then you can add additional narrative if you want to kind of personalise it a bit more, but at least you have a report that you can send out immediately after an assessment centre. The other thing with feedback is this feedback should not be a one-way process. You shouldn't be giving candidates the feedback and not expecting anything back. So what we would do is always ask for feedback from the candidates. And this allows you to continuously improve the process using an evidence-based approach. But also it's really important for candidates that they feel heard and can feedback on the process. So that feedback process shouldn't just be to the candidate, you should also be taking some on board as well.
And you've got this case study on the screen from Vodafone. You have hard evidence that this process is really engaging. 96% saying they had a better insight into the role, 93% saying they'd encourage others to apply this way, and 95% found that experience to be engaging. So that's really positive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And sometimes I think it's scary asking candidates for feedback, but think about it in a positive way, and that, you can use it to improve, because no one wants their assessment to be criticized. But yeah, it's really important to make it better.
Absolutely. Let's move on to challenge 4. And you touched on it, Sarah, earlier. We talked a little bit about that focus on well-being and how that has grown, particularly during the last 2 years as we were overcome by COVID-19. And we know, and we've talked a lot about on Inside HR and throughout HR Reviews, different channels, all about well-being and that increased importance of organizations supporting well-being. Yasmina, again, to start with you and Veolia, well-being and resilience, incredibly important, has always been incredibly important, but has definitely had an added significance over the last couple of years. What do you do at Veolia to support candidates going through this process in terms of well-being and their resilience?
Thank you, James. So Veolia as the business is really committed to employee safety and well-being. So we operate kind of a comprehensive employee assistance program, and all of our apprentices and graduates receive the support from both the managers and the mentors. So any apprentices or graduates joining the business, there will always be assigned a mentor on top of obviously having the support from the team and the hiring manager that they're going to be working with. So all of those people are dedicated to helping them to kind of make the most of their program, and not just the most of their program, but the most in their career after the program completes as well. So we have we have a mental health first aiders across the business as well. We recognize that the emerging talent needs connectivity. So for those reasons, we encourage the graduates and the apprentices to really network with each other through specialized early careers channels. So for example, we got our intranet channels, and we got a specialist early careers channel where all of the graduates and apprentices can come together. And then on top of that, they've got their separate channels as well. So they've got the separate apprentice channel and the separate graduate channel as well. And we also tend to bring them together, slightly less during the pandemic period, but definitely we're kind of reintroducing it now, where they can come together maybe once per quarter and kind of really communicate, interact, and they have like an interactive day, or like a team building day, we call it. We also implemented a buddying scheme and a 360 coaching scheme, so all of the apprentices and graduates can be involved in that. All of them can have a buddy, and I think this works really well because, as we know, the apprentices and graduates are not always comfortable saying everything to the hiring managers or even the teams, and the opportunity to have that discussion with people who are completely independent from the teams that they normally or generally work with. And then we also use our alumni and ambassadors to help them throughout their time on the program or scheme. And we also get them involved with the senior leadership teams. So, for example, when they join the business, they embark on the it's like an induction week, and as a part of the induction week, what we do is we actually invite our ExCo members to come and address both apprentices and graduates. And quite often, and it's a really inspiring and a really good story, because quite a lot of our ExCo members actually started their careers as apprentices or graduates themselves. So it's a really inspiring story.
So they can really relate to those candidates.
That's it.
That's amazing, Sarah. Loads of good stuff in there from Veolia and from Yasmina, mentoring, buddying, and all of the things that she mentioned there. But it seems to me that you can actually now look at these tools, these virtual tools, and use them as a measure of well-being within your organization in some way. How does that work? And is that possible?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're Aeon, so we're always about data. We love using data. And I think using data to improve resilience and well-being within your organization is really crucial. Two things I'll say quickly about this. First of all, it's important that you don't just look at one aspect of well-being, that you look at multiple aspects. So physical, emotional, social, financial, environmental well-being, because this gives you insights into what we call human sustainability, and it's more holistic, and it's a great measure of our ability to thrive in work and also in the long term. The second thing I'll say about this is it's really important that you look at it from multiple levels. So our Human Sustainability Index questionnaire gives individual insights, so an individual report into how you could improve your well-being and really, really tangible tips. The second one is at the team level. So it looks again at kind of what is the sustainability of a team, what can an individual manager do to build resilience within their team? And then the third piece is around the organizational level. So what do we need to implement on an organizational level in terms of our benefit strategy? What initiatives do we need to implement to make an impact on our employees? And then how do we communicate that as part of our broader employee value proposition?
We've got two challenges yet to go, and we've got about 5 minutes now until we take questions. So, and we've got loads of questions pouring in already. If you haven't had a chance to do that yet, please do click on the Ask a Question tab, pop your questions into the chat. We've got a few coming in already. Lots coming in around the assessment center for both of you, so you can prepare for that, and we'll talk more about that in the last 10 minutes. But let's have a look at our fifth challenge, which is how do we best use reward strategies? So we've talked about well-being, we've talked about talent attraction, we've talked about creating a diverse talent pool. We're now going to talk about reward. How is reward used to attract and retain early stage talent? Again, Yasmina, starting with you. Once you're through the early careers recruitment process, how do you look at reward for both graduates? First off, we'll talk about them first. How do you look at reward for them?
Yeah, so I think the most important thing to mention first and foremost is that for Veolia, it's more than just a paid job. So we already spoke about that. We are an extremely purpose-led organization with clear values, and the values are at the core of everything that we do as the business. So in respect of the salary, as the business, we continuously review the compensation packages, and we benchmark those packages against obviously the competitors on the market. And as well as that, we also speak to all of our graduates, we speak to all of our apprentices, we speak to our early careers partners to really understand what do the candidates look for, what do they want. And quite often what we've seen was that it's not all about the salary, it's about the development, it's about the investment into the long-term careers. And this is where I think Veolia and us as a business, we are extremely, extremely strong. So we really help all of the candidates to reach the full potential through all of the opportunities, training and development that we have to offer. With that in mind, what we decided to do over the last couple of years was we've actually made a decision that all of our apprentice and graduate vacancies and positions are now permanent. So we no longer recruit into those positions as the fixed term contracts, but we really invest into the candidates, and we really want to showcase that, you know, we are going to invest in them, and it's with the view that they stay with the business long term. And on top of that, I have to mention, obviously, diversity and inclusion, because as the business, we are really promoting diversity and inclusion. We work together with all the different groups, whether that's ex-offenders, ex-armed forces, LGBTQ. So there's a lot of support, and we got specialized groups within the business that really support those candidates as well once they join the business.
Brilliant. And Sarah, I'm going to guess, I'm going to take a wild stab that you're going to talk about data again.
How did you know?
No, but it's important, isn't it? That data analysis can really help organizations, can't it?
Absolutely. I know we're getting time to questions, so I'll say 3 high points. First of all, organizations need to make sure that their reward strategy is linking up with their future workforce strategy. So in terms of what skills you're paying for, where you're going to get them from. Secondly, you need to be aware of where your total rewards package sits within the market, particularly if you're looking to recruit new employees from a different talent pool. Think those people who didn't always hire tech now have to hire tech. How do you reward them? And finally, I've mentioned total rewards, but that's what we really need to be thinking about. A lot of the time, rewards gets melted down into like a salary, but it's about more than that, and how you communicate all of the different things you're bringing, like Veolia with their inclusivity and their development, how you bring that all together as part of your total rewards strategy, and how you communicate that to employees and candidates, importantly.
Now, our very last challenge, we're just going to take a slightly sort of broader view here and talk about how do you ensure that you're attracting, selecting, and developing talent in line with the future of work? Basically, what we're asking here, Sarah, is what behaviors are required for future success?
Yeah, absolutely. So to increase the longevity of our workforce, we need to develop greater future-proofed and future-ready competencies. And our research indicates that there are three key kind of capabilities we should focus on when future-proofing our workforce. First one is learnability, which focuses on seeking continual self-improvement. There's agility, which is about having the flexibility to adapt to changing situations, and curiosity, which is about being open to change and novelty. If you look at some of the results we found when applying our future readiness model, you see that we can identify people who are at a baseline more likely to be a top performer, but also who are more likely to self-develop. And this is important because we're identifying people who can do the job as it is now, but also who are going to have the motivation and the capability to develop themselves to fit the demands of their role as it changes, or even to completely upskill as the organization needs them to. So it's absolutely critical, particularly at early stage talent. So again, thinking about that word potential.
And that holistic piece means not just looking at early careers and the recruitment and development at that stage, but also making sure that they're able to continue that development through the organization.
Absolutely. And we do lots of role and job analysis with our clients. One of the biggest challenges they face is people leaving after the graduate program. And so they're losing that skill that they've developed in individuals. And a lot of the time, to give grads career progression, they progress them into being like a first-line manager role. However, often they might not be given the support needed to make this transition. And again, this can be another factor that leads people to leave. Think about how much has changed. It's really difficult to navigate the increased complexity the future work brings. So hybrid working, like there's so many factors. So we really need to empower our first line managers to build the well-being of our employees, give them the capabilities they need to succeed. And that's why we created our first line manager solution, which assesses and develops key competencies in those we are putting in that position of first line manager, because they really are critical as like a first responder and representative of the business.
Now, I've left us just 7 or 8 minutes for questions, and we've got loads coming in. So my apologies in advance to any ones we don't get to. Before we go to those, Sarah, just a final thought from you, your top tips on starting to implement a process like the one we've described, like the one that Yasmina has described so well with Veolia. Your top tips for organizations who want to look at their recruitment and their talent progression in this way.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, broaden your talent pool, increase accessibility by sharing your roles more widely, and use mobile-enabled technology throughout. Put that CV down and do not use it to screen. Use objective share and automatically scored assessments to make screening decisions. Embrace AI when it's done ethically, as it ensures everyone is assessed against the same criteria. Create assessment center processes that immerse candidates in your employee value proposition and also your ESG strategy. Think about Veolia as a values-driven and purpose-driven organization. Use data, obviously, at every stage of the employee life cycle, and to interrogate the inclusivity of your organization and where you sit compared to other firms. Build that human sustainability in a positive way in all of your hires to increase holistic well-being and engagement, and provide your line managers with the tools to lead in an inclusive way that balances employee well-being with generating results that ultimately businesses also need to do.